What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to replace the brake pads and rotors on the front of your Dodge Dakota. This is a 2002. These steps should be the exact same from 01 to 04. They will be very similar steps for most other vehicles with disc brakes, as well as the 97 to 2000 year range of Dodge Dakota. There will be some small variables. I've seen a couple different Dakotas where the calipers are held on with Allen screws as opposed to normal hex screws. So there's only going to be some minor changes, but the steps are going to be the same. You just might need different tools depending on your year. So again, this is an 02 four-wheel drive. We're going to use a 3/4 drive socket. Sorry, not 3/4 drive, 3/4 size socket, and remove the lug nuts and pull the wheel off. We already have it jacked up and on stands. Safety first. All right, so like I said, the fasteners are a little different. Now that we have the wheel off, it turns out that my truck uses the 7mm Allen socket style bolts. There's going to be two that hold the caliper on. You'll see there's a rubber boot here. There will also be one further down on the bottom side. We're going to rotate them counterclockwise to take the screws out. You want to be careful here. If it doesn't feel like it's coming, or it feels like the socket's twisting, stop. You don't want to round out the Allen socket because it's going to be a real pain to get that bolt out. So we're going to go ahead and crack it loose now. These pins, aka bolts, are actually the slide pins for the caliper as well. All right, now that the bolts are out, mine didn't come fully out because the little rubber boots are kind of holding them in place, but they are fully backed out. So we can go in here, use either a big flathead screwdriver or a pry bar, and just pry the caliper off of the caliper bracket. You may have to do the same on the bottom, kind of work it off. Now, before you do this, there's two different ways, because you're going to have to push the piston of the brake caliper, which is this guy right here. It's the disc on the caliper that puts the pressure and squeezes the brake pads. You can see it's extended out this direction a little bit. It's filled with fluid right now. So being that the new pads and rotors we're putting on are thicker, this is going to have to get pushed back in. You can do that a couple different ways. You can either, before you pull the caliper off, you can stick a pry bar or a screwdriver between the rotor and just kind of pry over on the brake pad. That'll push this in a little bit. Otherwise, when you get this caliper off, we can use a C-clamp, which is what I'm going to do, and just push it back in. So we're going to pull it off. We don't want to leave this dangle by the brake hose. So what we're going to do is the inner pad, just lift, pull it off. As you can see, mine are heat cracked because this caliper is actually bad. It's sticking. And it has these little clips on it. They push into the hole in the center of the piston there that just pulls right out. And then this pad is held in with these clips. You should be able to just kind of force it down and out like that. And then I like to use a bungee cord to hold the caliper up, hook it to something, or at least try to set it somewhere. You don't want to let it dangle by the hose and let that rip. All right, now most vehicles you typically have to unbolt the bracket that the caliper bolts to because the bracket covers the rotor. In the case of this Dakota, they actually used their head. They didn't have the bracket in the way, so we can go ahead and just pull the rotor right off. If you're having troubles getting it off, if it's rusted on, you might have to beat the rotor from the back side or hit around here. Make sure you don't damage the studs or the center of the hub here, but just tap it and kind of work it off. We have a new rotor here. I'll post a couple different options in the video description if you choose to buy them online. What you want to do is take it out of the box, There should be some amount of shipping oil or grease on it to keep the rotor from rusting in packaging. So what you want to do is take some brake clean or carb choke cleaner and spray the surface that the brake pad's going to be touching on the front and back side and get all that oil off. Otherwise your brakes aren't going to work. Won't be able to stop very well. So just gonna give it a little bit and make sure to get it off. Don't know if you can see this, but there's clearly stuff on there. So we're gonna get this nice and clean and install the rotor. All right, it's all cleaned up. As you can see, I'm wearing gloves, so I'm gonna try not to touch the brake pad surface to get any grease or contaminant on it. I'm gonna grab on the edges here, get it on the studs, push it on all the way, and now we are ready to pop the hood and remove the brake caliper, or sorry, the brake fluid reservoir cap, and compress the caliper. All right, so we're gonna remove the brake fluid reservoir cap. Now this is kind of a prime example. If you happen to notice your brake fluid isn't exactly at the max fill line, you don't necessarily want to top it all the way off to the top if you don't have new brake pads, because the fluid level will go down as your brake pads wear out. Obviously more fluid is going into the pistons in the caliper. So you'll see once we compress this caliper piston, the fluid level is going to come up, and that's normal. So we're actually going to reinstall the inner pad that goes on the piston. So you could have left that in there, my mistake. It just helps when trying to compress this again. All right, so we have the C-clamp in position here. We're going to go ahead and just tighten it. You can see the piston is retracting into the caliper slowly, and we're going to go until it stops. That means that it's all the way in. If you cannot compress this for whatever reason, you know, if you don't have a C-clamp, you can try using a big channel lock pliers and just pinching it. But if you're not able to get this to compress, it's a good sign that either your caliper is seized up or something's wrong with your master cylinder. So you would want to check that out. Take the clamp off once it's fully compressed. As you can see, it's flat there. And we're good to install the new brake pads. All right, so here we have our new brake pads. I just got a cheap set from O'Reilly's. Again, I'll post a couple different options in the video description if you want to buy them. What you always want to make sure, obviously, because there's a left side and a right side, you don't want to, it's kind of hard to mess these up with these clips on here, but I have seen them before where if they don't have these clips, people have actually installed these backwards, and the metal backing plate ends up being what's trying to stop the rotor. You want to make sure the friction material is facing the rotor on both sides. Don't make that mistake. So we're gonna go ahead, push this into place. And this one has those clips on it. You may need to be a little more aggressive. You can see there's these little alignment dowels. Those will go in these holes right here. So you might have to use like a hammer to tap this into place. There we go. You can see the clips are on. I know it's kind of hard to see with low light here, but the alignment dowels, you can see them through these two holes. We are ready to install the caliper. Make sure the hose is not kinked or twisted, and then always make sure that the bleeder screw, that'll be this little guy with the rubber boot on it, or that's got to be on the top of the caliper. If that's on the bottom, you either have the wrong caliper installed or you're putting it on upside down. So we're just going to get over the rotor, and you'll see here there's little tabs or fingers on each pad, same on the bottom side. Once this is in, you should have them resting against the caliper brackets like that. This is the proper way it should be in there. Now what I recommend doing is taking a little bit of some sort of lubricant. I use Seal Glide, you can use a little bit of grease or something, and just kind of coat these slide pins a little bit. Not the threads, but just the actual smooth surface. That's going to help the caliper slide without these things seizing up. Now we're going to push the slide pins back in and just kind of gently start them. You don't want to force it. I just keep kind of constant pressure pushing on it. If you got an impact like this, and just spin it, because the holes might not line up perfectly. You might have to kind of move the caliper around. So we're going to give it a shot here. Yeah, the hole's not lining up quite yet, so we got to move it a little bit. There we go, that one's started. Before I tighten that one up all the way, I'm going to go ahead and put the bottom one in. And again, you might have to rotate the caliper a little bit. You can see I was putting constant pressure inward on the pin while rocking the caliper, and I was able to get the bolt into the hole. I can feel it. So now we're good. Now I don't have a specific torque on these. If I had to give you a number, I'd probably say somewhere between 20 and 30 foot-pounds, but don't quote me on that. Just basically snug. You'll feel the bolt kind of bottom out and stop turning, and then just give it a little extra oomph. You don't want to snap it, but you don't want them coming loose either. So now that we got the new pads and rotor on, it doesn't hurt to give the brake pedal a couple pumps. What that's going to do is push the piston back out. A common mistake people make is when they do their brakes and they push the calipers back in and they hop in the vehicle and throw it in reverse or drive right away, and they have no brakes. The pedal goes right to the floor because the piston is not out and pinching anything yet. So want to make sure you give it a couple pumps before you try driving anywhere. Now that we're at this point, we're going to put the wheel back on and retorque the lug nuts. I believe the spec on these is about 100 to 120 foot-pounds. Again, don't quote me. Wouldn't hurt to do your own research on that, but that's what I torque mine to, is 120. Once you get the wheels on, use the 3/4 inch socket again. And like I said, torque them between 100 and 120 foot-pounds is what I do. Again, it wouldn't hurt to look up the actual specification, but I would guess it's right in there. Make sure you go around a few times and retorque after about 50 to 100 miles worth of driving, because they more than likely will need to be retightened. Once you have everything torqued, make sure to top off your brake fluid now that the truck is on level ground off the jacks. Don't forget to put your cap back on. You don't want any moisture getting in there. And you're done. Hopefully this video helped you out. If it did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more videos like this, and check me out on Facebook at Tony the Truck Guy. Thanks for watching.